Hey, it's Art. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are discussing dual mono processing and how we can utilize this style of processing on a variety of different effects and processes in order to get more width in our mixes and music production. So without further ado, let's hop into the digital audio workstation and get started. All right, dual mono processing is when we apply the same effect but have independent control over the left and right channels of a stereo track. In other words, we effectively duplicate a mono effect, as the name would suggest, dual mono, and have independent control again over the left mono track and the right mono track that make up a stereo track. This is something that can be easily done within Logic if you have a stereo track to begin with. For example, I have this synth from Serum. It's just a simple sawtooth synth with a low pass filter, and it's actually outputting a mono signal. We can see that in the correlation meter here on the mix bus. But it is showing up in stereo right here. So I can open up and go to pretty much any effect inside Logic. Let's pick something fun, maybe the Moog ring mod. And you see I have the stereo selection or dual mono. And if I open up dual mono, you'll see that I have left and right control right here, and I can do those independently of each other. So maybe I'll turn up the frequency of the ring mod in the left and then turn it down in the right. This might be a bit hard to see, so maybe this wasn't the best one to show right off the bat. But because we have differences in the left and right, we will now get some width out of this originally mono sound. You can see that the correlation meter is around 0. And if you're listening in headphones, you can really hear a lot of width. It almost sounds uncanny, like there's a lot of phase cancellation going on. Versus if we were to open up a ring mod and just go stereo, it would apply the same effect to the left and right channels. And because there is a mono source going into it, there will be a mono source coming out of it. So that's how you can quickly set this up in Logic Pro, just as a preliminary demonstration. Now, the dimension of width and where this dual mono processing really comes in handy is, in the most technical sense, produced by the differences between the left and the right channel. And so by definition, processing the left and the right channels differently will give us width in the mix. And of course, giving our tracks width is a great way to add interest to our stereo mixes. And so dual mono processing is a great way to achieve such width. While it's important to have a strong center image for translatability and contrast in the overall dimensionality of the mix when we do have stereo elements, we should be taking advantage of the stereo panorama available to us for our stereo mixes. And dual mono processing is a neat way to help us get more width out of our individual tracks, or even our subgroups and mix bus in our mixes and music production efforts. And so before we get into the full demonstration here, I write about this technique and 99 others in my PDFs, my music production PDFs. You can download those for free by signing up to my newsletter. It will be the first link in the description box of this video if you'd like to check those out for yourself. But let's get into the DAW and really hone in on dual mono processing. So you heard it here in the ring mod, but that's not really a great way of explaining dual mono processing because it's kind of a wacky effect. So let's return to this monophonic mono synth we have here. And once again, you can see the phase correlation right here is +1, which means that it is completely in phase between the left and the right channels, or in other words, it's mono. If we look over here at a sine wave I recorded and zoom in, bring this up so that we can really see. So completely out of phase. The crossover points are the same, but when the left channel right here is at its minimum amplitude, the right channel is at its maximum, and vice versa. So if I was to play this back, we would have a correlation meter of -1. And it largely cancels itself out. However, because we're still in stereo, we can hear it. It's very low, and so if you don't have headphones on, I wouldn't expect you to be able to hear it. But if I turned on this gain and then phase inverted one of them, then we would get a mono signal. You can see that right here. So by flipping the phase, or really flipping the polarity if we want to be technically correct, I don't know why all of these plugins say phase invert, it's not really flipping the phase, we get a mono signal. And so when there's no differences between the left and the right, we have complete mono. When there's maximum differences between the left and the right, we have maximum width, but we also have the worst mono compatibility possible. So if I was to revert this back to the left and right being completely out of phase with one another and then modified this, we actually wouldn't have any output. Turn mono off, we do have output. So that's just a quick preliminary on width and how dual mono processing can help us with our width. So it's important to get width out of our stereo mixes, but also to ensure that we still have mono compatibility. Don't want to push things too far, but we do want to get the width. And I just wanted to give you a preliminary view of the correlation meter here because we will be referencing it in this video. So let's actually start with our dual mono processing. We will go back to this mono synth. And one process I like using is actually simple EQ. So let's go to this channel EQ, the stock one from Logic, open up dual mono. You see, again, I have my left and my right. And what I can do here is, let's say I want to boost around 1000 hertz in the left channel, and in the right channel, I want to boost around 5000 hertz. And now we're going to have slight differences in the actual frequency makeup of this synth. And so EQ is effectively frequency dependent balancing. And when we use it in dual mono, we effectively get frequency dependent width control. And so because there's going to be differences in this frequency between the right and the left, and then differences in this frequency between the left and the right, we're going to get a little bit of width. So once again, without any EQ, you have complete mono, and with a little bit of dual mono EQ, we're a little bit off of that one. Now, EQ like this isn't going to make drastic difference, especially when we're filtering out a lot of that top end energy. But if I really gave some boosts right here, we could have another listen. And you see that we're getting wider because this correlation meter is dropping closer to 0 than it is to 1. Versus not having any EQ. This is a very subtle way to get a little bit of width. Of course, I'm boosting quite dramatically here, so I'm also increasing the loudness of this channel EQ, but it is a way to get more frequency dependent width out of our signals. So there's only going to be changes in the perceived width of, in this case, the synth at these frequencies. Everything in this range, because I don't have any EQ going on here in the left or the right, is going to maintain its mono signal. Now we can do this in channel EQ with dual mono. We can also open up the Pro Q3, and many other EQ plugins will allow for this. Super powerful EQ plugin. We can insert a new band, go down here and make it so that this band only affects the left channel. And then we can open another one and ensure that this one only affects the right channel, and then get a similar effect. But I digress on that point. Another process I really like is saturation. So let's go to the trusty Fab Filter Saturn II, my go-to saturation plugin. And instead of opening it up in stereo mode like this, which will still give us a stereo signal, I'll actually go here and adjust it to dual mono. And now in this case, I have, again, left versus right control. And what we can do here is drive up the warm tape perhaps on the left-hand side, and then maybe choose an entirely different saturation algorithm. So maybe an amp, maybe an American Tweed amp. And now we are going to get a lot of width out of this signal. Without, with. And if you're listening on headphones, you can really hear the width of this signal now. So we're distorting or saturating the left and the right differently. Technically, we are using the same effect because we have the Saturn applied to both channels, but we are applying quite different distortion characteristics to the left versus the right in an effort to get some more width. Now, modulation effects are often designed in stereo versions. So for example, if I was to open up just the stock tremolo from Logic in stereo, see that we have independent control over the left and the right. So I can move this phase so that it is 0 and we would get a mono signal because it would be applying the same to the left and the right channel. This rate of a quarter note, depth of 100, smoothing of 100. But I could shift the phase right here in this stereo plugin and then get some stereo information going on. Tremolo is an amplitude modulation effect, so we're going to get different variations in amplitude between the left and the right channels, and thereby get some width. You can change the phase here. which is really cool, but we can get even more out of our tremolo and indeed our other modulation effects by actually using them in dual mono. So let me actually open up another tremolo in stereo so that we can compare and contrast. You see in the stereo version right here, we have rate control, depth control, smoothing, and we can adjust the phase between the left and the right. But in this version, the dual mono, I have control over the rate and the depth of the left channel, so I can perhaps bring down the smoothing, bring down the depth, and maybe adjust the symmetry right here. And then I have all of that control again on the right channel. So maybe I'll bring the symmetry down a little bit, bring the width and the smoothing like that. And now I will bypass the stereo version and have a listen to the tremolo in dual mono. Independent control over the rate. And of course, this is just one example. It's the stock tremolo in Logic Pro. Nothing super special about this plugin. And I'm sure that there are tremolo plugins out there that would afford you effective dual mono control in a single stereo plugin. But just a quick way to show you how you can get some extra flexibility, so to speak, out of your dual mono processing. And if we were to have a look now at perhaps the polyphonic synth I have here, it's again in mono, it's based off of a sawtooth with a low pass filter. And we can do the same thing here. Perhaps go to what would be exciting here. Maybe let's run this through Neural DSP amp. We'll open up the archetype Nolly, dual mono. And with both of them the same, we should get a mono signal. But now if I was to perhaps change amps entirely, so the left channel will go through this amp, right channel will go through that amp. And now we should get some stereo information. Very nice. Again, this is a situation where I'm using the same effect in dual mono mode, but I'm processing it quite differently. In fact, I'm using two completely different amp sims along with different cabinets, but I think that you get the point. And all of this stuff is very similar to our stereo delays and our doubler effects. So for example, I'll just quickly go down to a simple Haas effect. I like the Kilohertz Haas, and I'll just open this up in stereo. And here you can see we have independent control over the left and the right channel. And this simple plugin is just going to delay one of those channels. So without the Haas effect, we have something in mono, just a C major triad. And with it, I'm only applying a slight bit of delay to the right-hand channel, delay time of about 4 milliseconds. You see that we have quite a bit of stereo information without, with. If you're listening with headphones, you can really hear the difference. And something is similar here with our doubler effects, something like the Waves doubler, very aptly named. I can just open this one up in stereo and get rid of the direct channel. So now we have voice 1 all the way to the left, voice 2 all the way to the right. Of course, we can alter the pans of these so it's not true left-right or dual mono processing, but it's similar enough. And here we have a delay, a detune, depth and rate for the detune, feedback for the delay, all that good stuff. And with this turned on, get a lot of width with it off. Completely mono. So that's just to show you a few other options we have for applying different processing to the left and the right channel in order to get width out of our otherwise mono tracks. Before we hop into the full production session to show you dual mono processing in action, if you are enjoying this video and getting some value out of it, I would highly encourage you to hit that like button. It really helps out small channels like this here in the YouTube algorithm, and I greatly appreciate that. All right, here we go. All right, here we are inside a production session for a song I'm working on called Gravity Bomb. And I have a mono saw lead right here, just based off a simple sawtooth wave. Again, the low pass filter to kind of curb a little bit of those high-end harmonics of the sawtooth signal. And the effects, I have a little bit of distortion on it, but other than that, very simple patch. And by itself, it sounds like this. So you completely mono. +1. I am sending it to some stereo delay. Without that delay, very much mono. And I'm sending it through the archetype Nolly. I love sending especially sawtooth style leads through guitar amps. And the archetype Nolly is one of my favorite guitar amp sims. And it's just super easy to set up versus having to run a signal out of my interface into my guitar amp, mic up the guitar amp, record it back into the interface, and then not being able to really tweak it in real time after the fact. So I really like it for that. But this is just a standard mono plugin in this case. There's no dual mono in this plugin itself. The first dual mono plugin I have is actually the little altar boy. This is one of my favorite plugins. It's one from Soundtoys, and you can see here left versus right. And on the left-hand side, I'm just boosting up the performance a little bit, or shifting the performance, I should say, 0.2. And in the right, I just have -2. So very minimal processing by the little altar boy, just to give a little bit of a different performance sense between the left and the right. And just with this dual mono process, we get something that sounds like this. See, it's dancing around a little bit, a little wide, without, with. And now the phase cancellation between the left and the right is going to push this lead element a little bit back in the mix. And that's just something that we have to live with if we're trying to get width out of our signals, especially with strange effects that affect the frequency makeup of them. We're going to oftentimes lose a little bit of that upfrontness, for lack of a better term. But beyond that, I have the Pro Q3. This one is not set up in dual mono, but I'm doing that thing I talked about a while ago, where I have a boost here only on the left channel, about 4 dB at 1220. And then I have another boost only on the right channel at about 7060 Hertz and 3 dB. And so with this engaged, it sounds like this. It just helps bring back a little bit of what was lost by introducing the little altar boy. Without, mono, with, we got some width. And now in the context of the mix without these two processes, it sounds like this. And with. So again, it kind of subdues it a little bit as we are pushing the width out with these dual mono processes. So it's not necessarily going to make especially lead instruments sound better in the mix, but it is a way to add some more character, some more width to any elements within the mix. Of course, this is a production session. It's by no means anywhere close to being mixed, but you can hear, even if only subtly, the differences between having a little bit of width in the lead instrument versus having it entirely mono. When it's in mono, it really pushes forward and stands out in the mix as the lead element. And then with some width here and some formant shifting, of course, from the little altar boy, it kind of steps a little bit back in terms of being the front element in the mix. But in my opinion, it blends a little bit better with the overall sound of everything happening in the production session. I keep saying mix. This is not a mix. It's more of a production session. But here it is again with some width. Without. With. So yes, indeed, it is subtle. I just wanted to show you how I would use this in a production session in this case, to get just a little bit more width and movement out of a lead instrument. If you'd like more information on other music production techniques, especially these niche ones that not a lot of people are talking about, I would encourage you to subscribe here to the My New Microphone YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, or anything to add to the conversation here, please leave a comment down in the comment section below. I'll be sure to answer you and provide any insights or get a conversation started whenever possible. If you've made it this far into the video, there's going to be a card to another music production technique video in this end screen. I'd encourage you to click on that one, check it out, and I'll see you in the next video regardless. Cheers.